welcome back to the Jersey Joe Show. I'm Jersey Joe. I'd like to thank everybody who has subscribed to the channel so far. If you have not, please do so. You'll get updates on latest podcasts, things like that. So make sure to subscribe and like. You can also follow me on Facebook and Instagram at Jersey Joe. I've gotten a lot of questions on, where did you come from? Why are you sitting here talking about Jesus, and what does all that mean, and what's your story, right? Some of you may have seen my appearance on the Unashamed podcast. I talked a little bit about, from a firefighter's perspective, what I experienced on 9/11. And then I talked about my relationship with Phil and, how I ended up where I'm at. I hunt with him, and I'm very close with him. And basically, the story is the story, like I said it, right? I lived in New Jersey my whole life, born and raised. Was a Catholic up until about 4 years ago. I'm sitting in New Jersey, doing the daily struggles, day to day. I think COVID had just really started ramping up, basically, in around the 2020 timeframe. I decided to go ahead and put the house up for sale. And I came across, let me go backwards, right? Let me go back in time a little bit more to even before I moved, right? So, my full-time job is doing IT work. That's what I've always done my whole life, basically. And I've also been a firefighter. I got about 30 years experience as a firefighter. I've held just about all the positions in the fire service that are out there. And, that was pretty much my life. I spent a lot of time working out on the road, not at home, as well as in the firehouse. Firefighters, first responders in general, right, have that mindset that they just want to help. Now, knowing what I know about Jesus, they're actually, they're the hands of God. They're doing the good deeds for the Almighty. They love and care about their fellow citizens and brothers and sisters, and they go and they put their lives on the line every single day for ordinary people. I'm now one of those ordinary citizens, and I depend on the folks in the police department, the fire departments, EMS. These are our frontline, defense outside of our military, right? And these are the people at home that we look to when we need help. So I am a very big proponent to get behind and stand behind first responders. And also, my mission here is to bring the gospel to first responders, right? First responders see things that you as an ordinary person would never see, and they keep it inside. Unfortunately, suicide rates are high amongst first responders. Divorce rates are high, and their stress, anxiety, depression, it all is part of the life of being a first responder. Our military, you look at the way we treat our military here in this country when folks come back from deployment, and they need that extra help because their mind isn't right because of the things that they've seen or the things that they've done. You see homeless veterans on the street in this country. It's upsetting. It's not something that I like to see when I see it, right? And I try to help, but let's face it, you can't help all of them. You'd go broke trying to do that, right? So you try to help where you can, and help them in their heart and in their mind, and ultimately point them to Jesus. And I think that's what this is all centered about for me, right? This whole podcast journey that I'm doing, where I'm showing you how to cook things, and we have some fun things we talk about, just different adventures in my life, hunting, and we're towards the end of a great duck season. I've been now hunting with the Robertsons for probably now 4 years, and this by far is the best season I've had yet. I've been able to go a lot and learn a lot, Jace likes to make fun of me and says that, I close my eyes when I shoot, but that's not true. I open them, and I'm actually getting really good at it. I mean, I was excited on Facebook. I posted the other day that I got my first banded duck. It was a mallard. It came from Michigan. That was pretty cool. And when you see that, you're like, yeah, that's what it's all about, because that's like the golden ticket, or the Stanley Cup of duck hunting, right? When you can get a banded duck, that's pretty cool. So my mission is to continue to hunt, continue to share the gospel, and most importantly, I want to help first responders and anybody, even if you're not a first responder. I want to reach out to you and teach you what I've learned about the gospel and how it's helped me with my struggles of anxiety and depression, because it's a horrible thing to deal with. So going back to what I opened up with, why did I move to Louisiana, and why after 37 years of life did I finally see the light, so to speak? And it's simple. It's because it wasn't shown to me. I'm going to put up on the screen now. These are what we call the gospel symbols. And, you'll notice that you have an arrow that points down, you have a cross, you have a tomb, you have an arrow that points up, and then you have another arrow that points down. And it just seems like scribbles, but it actually has so much meaning. It's mind-boggling, and I've never really seen that before. And like I told you, I was born and raised Catholic, made my first Holy Communion, my confirmation. I did all that. I went to church, and I was lost, and I had a headache by the time that I left. And those of you that understand Catholicism, you know what I'm talking about, with the constant stand, kneel, stand, kneel, stand, kneel, sing hymns that you really don't know the words to or can't even understand. A lot of times when the Father would speak, he would just simply recite passages in the Bible and really not explain it the way I had it explained to me. So it's 2020, right before COVID, and I looked at my wife and I said, I'm just tired of all this, and I want a new beginning. And at that time, I was winding down in the fire service. I was retired as a chief. I went out as a battalion chief, and then I did about 2 years as chairman of the board as a commissioner. And then that was kind of like coming to an end when I decided that it was time to pick up and move. And, we, for the past probably year and a half in my household, had been watching the Duck Dynasty show. And, I was watching this show, and I'm looking at how it's centered around the gospel. And I thought to myself, I cannot believe in this day and age we have a TV show that's on regular TV that you can watch that actually talks about God and centers their life around God. But yet they're normal, everyday people, have fun, do fun things, cut each other up, and, just have a blast, joking around and just having a good time. But in the end, it's all about the Almighty. And it's what's most important that I didn't see when I was watching the show. It's about sharing it with others. And, now that I've become part of the Forever family, I've realized that that's my job now, and that's my challenge moving forward. And so I realize I'm all over the place, but I'm trying to tell this story the way the timeline goes, right? So we decided that, actually, I won't say we decided. I kind of said to my wife, this is what we're going to do. Because my wife, she started working from home during COVID, and I was really kind of seeing what she was dealing with from a stress level with her job. And I just thought, this is crazy. She's stressed out of her mind. I'm living in a place where my taxes are through the roof for property taxes and, your employment taxes, state taxes. It was just getting out of control. And I thought, what, I make pretty decent money. Why don't we just move? And, we'll kind of start over, right? And that's what really gave me the idea to move to Louisiana, West Monroe, and, kind of start that part two of my life, right? So what I did was I had reached out to the Unashamed podcast through the email, like I'm sure a lot of people do, and kind of really didn't get a response, right? Because you got to face it, it's not like they're not looking at what's coming in. But now that I have a podcast and I put out things, you get a lot of messages, and you just can't possibly answer every one. There's just so many that come across. So I can see how it kind of got lost in the mix, right? But I want to set the record straight here. My goal was not to come down here to meet the Robertsons and automatically be part of their family, part of their life. I mean, I'm like, that's ridiculous. That's never going to happen. That's not the plan here. The plan is to be around people like them. And, looking at watching the show and seeing the reaction that the show got, it seemed like this whole southern area, which they like to kind of refer to as the Bible Belt, was the place where I wanted to be. I'll always say some of my best friends are in New Jersey or from New Jersey. I still have family in New Jersey. I don't hate New Jersey. I don't hate anybody. I love the area. I love the people. There's just the way that things happen up there, I'm really not happy with. And I wanted to get away from that. I wanted to kind of reset, make new friends, and kind of reset my life. And so that's why I moved. I've heard comments from people, oh, he left in the night. He was running from something. No, I wasn't running from anything. Look at me. I'm putting myself out here on the internet. I'm running from nothing or nobody. I just wanted to reset my life because my anxiety was very high. I felt depressed, just unhappy with the way that things were going, and I wanted to make a change. So, long story short, put the house on the market in New Jersey, and within 24 hours, it sold. And I was like in a position now where I need to find a house quickly and get out of here because they wanted a 30-day settlement. So, we went and took a couple of trips down to Louisiana, looked at a few houses. We were lucky and found one in Monroe, actually, which is across the river from West Monroe. And we found a nice house there that had just gotten finished construction. So we decided that that's going to be the one to move to at least get down there. So we put everything in motion and basically packed everything up, got a moving truck, paid them to move all the furniture and everything down here. And made the move. And we lived in that house for about a year. When we got down here, I went over to WFR Church and met my forever family and started talking to them, about why I moved. And this is a small town down here, Monroe, West Monroe, small town. So word gets around. Word got around quickly that there was some guy who picked up his entire family and his entire life and moved down south here in search of something new, in search of the gospel. And, that's it, really. I started going to a small little church in Monroe that Phil Robertson happened to preach at on Sundays. And he had heard about me, and he wanted to talk to me. So I had a conversation with him. I met him the first time. It's a very awkward conversation. If you can imagine, sitting in front of someone that you watched on TV, you listen to them preach on videos, and you're seeing them in person sitting in front of them. It's kind of overwhelming. So, when I look back on that, where I'm at today, I kind of take that for granted sometimes. So I need to put myself in that position when I see other people who sit down and are very nervous and jumpy and looking, scared almost to talk to them. So I get it. I know what you're talking about. My plan wasn't to become best friends and, work with him and help push the word. My plan was just, hey, I moved here now. I want to reset my life. I want you to teach me what you can about the gospel, and I'm going to come every Sunday and learn from you. And it went from that to him seeing me every Sunday and listening to my story. It fascinated him, and he was just amazed that someone would pick up their entire life and move and kind of reset everything. And it just amazed him. And, when you think about it, it is kind of crazy to think what I did, right? It's even more crazy to think that I've developed such a relationship as I have. If you know about Phil Robertson, you know that Phil wasn't always the Christian that he is today. You hear about, how there was a story of someone who brought him to Christ. And, it was his mentor. And, he learned as much as he could from him and then moved forward. And that was kind of like what he sees in me, I think. And I, had picked it up as quickly as I did and embraced the Almighty like I did. I think it impressed him. And he started asking me to get more involved with him at a personal level and be sort of like his mentee. And I jumped for that opportunity and embraced it. And, I now, I meet with Phil weekly up at WFR, where he has his own show that he does. It's not a show. It's a Bible study in the mornings on Sundays at WFR Church. And I highly recommend that you, if you want to really hear it from Phil, that's one opportunity to actually meet him and listen to what he has to say. So I help him with that. And I also meet with him during the week, and we have Bible study. And, we talk about what's on my mind, questions I may have, and so on. And he's just been a tremendous resource and a tremendous mentor to me. I feel like I'm now obligated to pass it on. And that's really what I want to do. I feel like that I'm meant to do more, and it's such a weird thing to say, right? But, you think about what has happened to me in my life and how it's happened. It's impossible to say that there is no higher power, no God, because of what has happened in my life. When I look at the things that I've experienced since I moved here and since I accepted the Almighty into my life, it's changed for the better. Everything has gotten better for me. So I referenced the gospel symbols, right? And that's kind of what it's all about. That was the first thing that I learned, right? I said a couple of weeks ago in a Bible study that we were doing, there was a group there, and I said, most of it, well, let me put it this way. Do you know that the Bible is the biggest selling book ever? And it seems to be the biggest seller of all time, book-wise. And if you look at, even take something as simple as our calendar, right? It's 2024. It's 2024 years since Jesus was here. So I talked about, these gospel symbols, right? And what they mean and what they mean to me. So we're going to be talking about them a lot as we go through, and you're probably going to start to recognize the symbols as you see them. Like I said, the Bible is the biggest selling book of all time, right? And the Bible, something that I didn't know as a Catholic, because I just really didn't take the time and really just didn't understand it, but it's actually a compilation of authors, right? And, that's what the whole book is made of. So I highly recommend that, after today, you start to look through your Bible, and it'll really open up your eyes, right? But let's look at it like this, right? I like to call it Gospel 101, or the Bible for Dummies. And I'm not saying that in a way to, be mean or nasty or whatever and say that anybody's a dummy. But, it can be quite overwhelming and boring sometimes reading the Bible. And there's nothing wrong with you feeling that way. That's why reaching out to others is important, to learn more about, what you're reading and to understand what you're reading. And that's one of the things that I love about Christianity, because when you listen, to who's at the pulpit speaking, they tend to, yes, read a passage or talk about a particular chapter or a particular book, but they relate it to common day things. And that's how I got the picture. So back to these symbols, right? So, you see the arrow down, right? What that means is that's when Jesus came to earth. God basically gave Jesus to us. And the goal for Jesus was to live on the earth and preach and die for our sins. When you look at the calendar, it's 2024, 2024 years ago, something happened. What happened? That's what this tells us. Jesus died on the cross for us. And after he died on that cross, he was entombed. And 3 days later, he rose. He spent some time with us, and then he went up and sits at the right hand of the Almighty. And he will come down again. And when he comes down again, it's going to be game over, And we're going to all be living in bliss. We're all going to be resurrected and have a much better life. So in a sense, really, that's what those gospel symbols means. It's the death, burial, and resurrection of the Almighty. God is Jesus and Jesus is God. It's all the same, right? It's the same being, the same thing that we look at in our lives. So, outside of that, that's what you're going to learn first. And that's what I learned first. And I thought it was interesting that, Jesus did this for me. So I started looking more into it. Jesus did this for me. Well, how do you know that this happened? Were you there? No, I wasn't there. Everybody I talked to wasn't there. So how did I know this happened? We count time by him. Something happened 2024 years ago. Something pretty big. Big enough for us to count time by him. So that's what this is all about, right? That's why, when we start to preach and we start to read the readings of the gospel, the books of the gospel, we say to ourselves, obviously this is important. Let's take a break and we'll be right back. So we talk about, counting time by him, right? And, when people try to say to me, well, how do you know you weren't there? The Bible could be just made up. And I'm going to tell you the answer to that, right? First of all, think about all the great things that have happened in this world, the events that we look at, World War I, World War II, things like that, some of the big impactful things that happen in this world, we look at and we have holidays for them or things like that, but we don't count time by them. So that's my first rebuttal to them. So, if you say there's no God and, I'm crazy or this, that, and the other thing, well, listen, I read the same thing that everyone else read, and I look at my calendar and, it's very clear to me that back in that time, something happened of, an extraordinary thing that was big enough for us to say, all right, well, starting today, this is the first day after Christ has died. And, we're going to go from there. So, to me, for the world to do that, it's obviously true. So, not to mention, for those of you that are just beginning here, right, I'm going to tell you to look at Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, probably the last 4 pages of each book, and that is the gospel. The Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John really, in my opinion, is the gospel. You can read all of the full books for each one. I recommend that highly. But if you're just getting started and you have questions, read it, because it's 4 different authors that have the same opinion of what happened. and the same recollection of what happened. And it's all centered around the death, the burial, the resurrection of the Almighty. So again, you see these symbols, and that's what they mean. That's what they mean to me and other Christians around the world. This is what we consider the gospel. So again, my goal here is to preach the gospel to anybody who is interested, but do it in a way that is not, boring or make you fall asleep. I want you to want to hear this show, and I want you to be involved with this show. I want you to send in emails about different topics and give your opinions. As we grow this podcast, sure, we're going to have others on. We're going to have guests, and we're going to talk about different things. So it's going to continue to grow. That's the plan here. It's not going to be all gospel talk all the time. We're going to talk about fun things that we do, things that I do. I think I'm going to tell some stories, right? I talked today about the story of, how I got to Louisiana, where I came from in New Jersey. Being a firefighter for all those years, I've got a lot of stories. So, if there's a particular story that someone wants to hear about something, I can definitely, move into that. We can also, I don't want to get too political on here, because that's really not what it's about. But, we might talk about some things that are going on in the world, some, things that are not really what I would call moving us in the right direction, maybe like we talk a little bit about Israel and Gaza Strip and some of that stuff that's going on, right? When you think about that, because again, we got what's over in Israel, right? Again, look in the Bible and let's read about Israel. You can Google a lot of this stuff. It's all on the web. As much as they try to hide it and censor it, the gospel's on the web too. You can find it. You can find Bible verses, and you can ask questions on what they mean and how to interpret different Bible verses. So that's something that I would recommend as well. But all in all, that's the story of where I'm at today and how I got there and what I want to do. And ultimately, like I said, my goal is to reach out to the brothers and sisters who are our first responders and work with them and, provide them the opportunity that I had to learn the gospel, to be able to share it with others. Because that's what it's all about. It's the gospel is meant, you're charged when you become baptized, right, into the death, burial, and resurrection of the Almighty. Your charge is to make disciples of others and share what you've learned with others. And when you think about it, that's what we do as humans, right? As people, right? We learn things on our own, and then we turn around and we teach others. That's why we have schools and universities and things like that. They continue to teach things that they've learned and, history, and just pass it on, right? And that's kind of what it's all about. No matter what profession you're in, you're always passing on what you've learned to be better, right? To, continue to improve on the way you think and the things that you do. So that's really what I want to do here. And I hope ultimately that we have a lot of fun here and do a lot of neat things. There's a lot of things that I'm planning to do in the future. From a cooking standpoint, there's going to be some different things that we're going to cook, and we'll go ahead and put them up on the channel. I am talking about a cookbook that will get put together. It will encompass a lot of the Italian/Cajun way I've been integrating my recipes since I've been down here, and folks seem to really love it and are constantly asking for recipes. So what I want to do is put together a whole cookbook that has all that. And we'll share a lot of those recipes on some podcasts that we'll do too going forward. But that's ultimately what we're going to be doing here. So today we had a quick study and talked a little bit about the gospel. And, some of your homework there is to look into, like I said, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and just read the past, or the last probably 4 pages of each. And it'll give you a really good understanding of each writer's perspective of what happened. And I think what we're going to do on the next study, we're probably going to talk a little bit about the Last Supper, or communion, as some people like to call it, and why we do it every Sunday in church, and why we should do it every night before a meal with your family. It's very important. So I think that's what we're going to talk about next time. And until then, I'd like to thank you all for listening and encourage you to send in requests to jerseyjoecongemi@gmail.com. We'll post it down in the bottom here. You can go ahead and send in your questions, comments. If there's something you would like me to talk about or give my opinion on, I will gladly do so. And like I said, I'm learning too as we go sometimes. So if there's answers that I need to get, I will get them and give you my perspective on that answer. So that's what it's all about here. If you have ideas for some topics, send them over as well. But again, thank you, and keep the faith. We'll talk soon.